Stone
All right.
Roses.
Stone Roses.
An
Yeah,
interesting
second coming.
one. I'll have you run the numbers in a second, but you were extremely high on the Stone Roses
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
album, and I was disappointed that I wasn't higher on the
Right.
Stone Roses first album. So that's the
Yeah, that
context
was.
for this one.
Yeah. So this is Second Coming by the Stone Roses. Comes in at number 341 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums. Number 49 in 1994. Number 1,844 of all time. It's their second highest rated on Best Ever Albums, behind their 1989 debut self-titled album, The Stone Roses. And they're actually ranked number 79 of overall artist rankings, which is in Best Ever Albums, which is kind of remarkable because I think these are kind of the only albums that they really had, because they broke up
It's
after
the only
this.
two.
So
Yep.
yeah. So there you go. So yeah, this. Yeah, go ahead. Do you want to start, John? You want me to go? Where are you?
I'll start.
Go
So
ahead.
this is
Yep.
an interesting album because if there's song one and the last song, which this last song just felt like it was trolling me. I almost took a couple points off my overall score because I was irritated by it, because
Yeah.
it felt like a joke. And the example we always use on the show, right, is Bugs by Pearl Jam, where it's like, why is this on here? Like, what is this design? But that gets out of there in like a minute and 30 seconds, I think, if even that. This is just 6 minutes and 26 seconds of just.
Let me just say
irritating me.
on Wikipedia here, it's called, the song's called The Foz.
Yeah.
It's also a hidden track, and it says it's track 90. Yeah. So this is one of those, not only is a hidden track where it's not just at the end of like the last song, it actually, the CD skips track number 13, 14, 50. They're all like a second long, and then track 90 is The Foz, which is what you're hearing. So I think it's not supposed to be part. It's one of the 90s gimmicky things that they were doing. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't need that. I also don't need an 11-minute opener from a band that at their best does snarling guitar rock. I would much freaking rather have guitar rock than an 11-minute opener. So I got the stuff I didn't like out of the way. Then after that, everything in between I liked quite a bit. And I would say I actually, upon first listen, like this album more than the first time I listened to the first Stone Roses album. And I went back this week and listened to that Stone Roses album to see if it would grow on me a little bit. And it did a little bit. Still not to that Hallelujah level that a lot of people have for that first album. But definitely, and I said at the time, I think that album felt like a grower to me. And you guys were like, oh, I immediately liked it, right? Was that you guys got it right away?
Yeah.
So
I had heard. I actually also had heard it before, so
Okay.
It wasn't totally new to me. But I even the first time I heard it, I do remember going, "Yeah, this is pretty good."
But yeah, like there's some great songs. The last song, which I guess the last true song on the album, Love Spreads, is a great song. 10 Story.
Did you know that one before, John?
I think a little bit. Like, I don't know if I know it exactly, but I definitely had the vibe of I've heard this song before.
Yeah, it definitely. The chorus, I was like, because as soon as the song started playing, I was like, "Is this that Let Me Put You in a Picture?" And I couldn't. It took them a while to get to the chorus, so for a second there, I thought it actually might have been a different song. But then they kicked in with it, and I was like, "Yes, I definitely." I don't know where or what movie or what soundtrack or whatever, but it's definitely familiar.
It felt like it was. I knew it in the sense that like I'd heard like in another era on 120 Minutes or something, and it was just a song that I didn't immediately want to run out and grab, listen to more of it, but I also didn't dislike it either. But I thought 10 Story Love Song was the best song on this album. It's a great song, but there's a lot of good songs on this album. The other thing that I noticed immediately was how often they sounded like other bands that were coming later in the decade. I mean, there's a song that sounds exactly like Oasis on this album. Like, exactly. Did you catch that? I did not write down, unfortunately,
yeah, I mean, I heard Oasis at various parts. There wasn't one song that was like, that's an Oasis song.
Right, and Stone Roses, they're in that baggy movement, right? That was kind of their thing, and Britpop was a different thing than
they're listed as alt rock, blues rock, funk rock, Britpop. They do have a little bit of a lane there too.
Manchester, wasn't that another thing that was floating around there or something like that?
Acid. They're part of the acid house or acid rock or something
Yeah.
like that. Neo psychedelia. That was another one because there's like definitely a psychedelic. Yeah,
I want to say
Madchester. I see that here.
Manchester, right? And like
Yeah.
I always remember the last time we did Manchester, and I want to say like I never quite understood what baggy meant. Like baggy, was it their pants or something? But like the baggy movement as
As
well.
like a musical genre, or
I think it was called like the well. While I'm giving my take on this, maybe just do a quick Google for
yeah,
me. Max.
baggy
Go ahead.
cult. It's a cultural scene. The baggy
Yeah,
cultural
that's
scene.
what I mean. Like the bag. Remember how like the Who back in the day had the mod and stuff like that.
Okay,
Like
here.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of
here you
like
go.
how like Mazzy Star was in and Susanna Hoffs were like the Paisley Underground, right? These scenes.
It's a British alternative dance genre.
Yeah, weren't
So
these
there's a
guys part
dance.
of it?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's.
Yep.
I remember us talking about that before. So yeah, it feels like they're like in that and at the end of that era and going, in the middle of when Britpop was exploding. They're kind of there, but there's a lot of band. At times they sounded like Squeeze on this album, the band Squeeze that we covered, or the Buzzcocks, right when they get more poppy. I think there's times where they definitely sound like the Jam and the Kinks on this album as well. They're not quite as much like leaning into the Britishness, but like you could definitely tell they're a British band, and I'm not
Yes.
talking in an accent way. I'm talking more in like their angle of life and general sound. They resemble other bands that were definitively British. Like it's kind of like there's two types of British bands, right? There's British bands are British, but you don't process them first and foremost as being British, right? And that's Beatles are probably the ultimate version of that, right? But there's a ton of others, right?
But I would also say that these guys, it does also sound, I think his accent and his British sounding voice comes
Right.
out as well.
Well, but that's
on
what I'm
this.
getting at. Like,
Yeah.
one of the things that I'm learning about this, like Britpop, is whether it be Blur or Oasis or Pulp or Suede or stuff. This group, these are groups that, they let you know that they're British, and not just because of an accent, but they're going out of their way to not hide their Britishness, right? And of course, the other group that came to mind, and I'm sure you wrote this note, Matt, is this sounds a lot like the Arctic Monkeys too. Later, like I thought, I thought there was a lot of stuff, especially like the first couple albums, but especially some of the stuff when they got like experimental later and really plugged in.
Yeah.
The guitars and stuff is kind of what not so much like fluorescent adolescent. I bet you look good on the dance floor, like Arctic Monkeys. I'm talking more like maybe not Humbug, but like AM, right? Like Arctic Monkeys, I'd say is there. But that's all a recipe for success, and I like this one, and I do think it was interesting that this one connected with me pretty much immediately because I know this is considered the inferior album to the first album, but I didn't think it was much of a misstep at all. And going back and listening to the first album, I thought they were a nice paired set. And for a band that only has 2 albums, I actually think they make a pretty good, almost like double album, greatest hits kind of a band. So as a complementary piece, they fit. And so this one gets a thumbs up for me. I enjoyed this album quite a bit.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be a step back. But I liked it. Because it I think I like there's a good amount of variety on here. Yes, to many of the bands that you have said, and then some. Right there, this sounds like a lot of different things. This was another one that I also found it hard to kind of pinpoint because I'm just hearing so many, different things. I even heard this has definitely got some 70s vibe, there's a little bit of Zeppelin vibe here too.
Well, begging you could have been on Zooropa.
Yeah, and that was also kind of like, those like that band Republica, was kind of like that a little bit too.
Right.
There's a lot of this is a lot of great bass lines first of all, like just really good bass grooves, really kind of fast drumming, right? There's like definitely like a faster pattern drumming going here. It's got some great guitar sounds too, like very dirty blue, like alternative blues rock. Driving South in particular is just like that's a straight up great, more of a modern blues sounding song. But then you've got a song like 10-Story Love Song is kind of like more
menacing
of a Britpop.
guitars is how I call it when they're at their best. Like that's how I describe the sound, like
Okay,
a menacing sort of sound.
Yeah. And then they've got like Tightrope, which is almost like a gospel type blues song. And then Daybreak's got is like a jam. There's jam band stuff in here where they're just kind of like playing off one another, and great hooks, great production. I like his voice. The lead singer's what's his name? Ian, is he Ian Brown? Yeah, the lead vocals is Ian Brown. John Squire's a guitar player. I think he writes most of the songs. And it is a long album. But the last track, I don't know. Hidden tracks are always kind of like throwaways for the most part. Every now and then you get a really good. I like the Janet Jackson one actually. That hidden track was excellent on Janet, the Janet album.
I should also mention "How Do You Sleep" is a really good song. We haven't mentioned that at all, but that's a good one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great too.
It's a little bit like a replacement song.
Okay, yeah, and that's the thing. You're right. There's so many different things that are happening here, and there's bands that came before them, and there's bands that came after them, and it's a hodgepodge of a lot of different things. But it also is they're striking me as one of those bands now that I know basically their entire output. As soon as you hear the song, whether it's the production, or Ian Brown's vocals, it's a pretty distinct sound, right? Like I don't think I would mistake a Stone Roses song for somebody else, because even though they have a lot of elements of different things, it's like, yeah, they kind of have their own distinctive sound. So I don't know. I didn't listen to the first record, after listening to this. This seems better than what I thought it was going to be. I don't know. Some of the articles that I read are, definitely made it sound like this was like a,
I don't pay attention to any critics because I don't want to be biased into believing an album is good or bad. Because
part of it,
and I'm glad I don't read some of that, because I think if I had read it before I did it, I wouldn't have had it on. I would have talked myself into liking the first album more than I did and not liking this as much as I did.
Right. And I think part of it too is because the first album was so lauded. It's like, this is one of the greatest albums ever, and and all this stuff. And then for whatever reason, this didn't connect with certain people or whatever. And in certain publications it got panned. Some places it did okay, But yeah, if you look at the reviews. I'm just looking at on Wikipedia here, and you've got like Q, Rolling Stone, 2 stars, 3 stars from AllMusic, 3 stars from the Encyclopedia of Popular Music. So clearly not like a transformative record that the first one got credit for, but
2 stars, really? That's just somebody
I don't get it.
Up their ass,
I don't get it. Maybe people feel like it's too long and the variety's too much, that maybe it's all over the place. Or I know sometimes we've talked about this before where, you feel like an artist is trying to do too many different things and it's not really congealing or gelling together. And I've certainly have felt that way about certain like I remember the Jellyfish album that we covered was very much like this. They're trying too much. It's not really fitting together. This fit together perfectly fine for me. And I don't mind. I love the variety here. I love the different vibes that it's going for. I didn't even mind the long. The first song is so long because they spend 5 minutes doing like this intro that's not even really part of the song. It's like 2 songs in one. Then the first one's just kind of like the first part is just laying the groundwork. I don't know, but it doesn't even bother me because I know what's coming is going to be great. But I really liked it. This is a band that covering their 2 of their albums so far now. That's just going to stick with me. These are albums I would definitely go back to multiple times and really enjoy. So yeah, big thumbs up. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, good stuff. I think we're on the same page quite a bit this episode, it seems like, whether it be our placement of the singles and our takes on the first 2 albums. But yeah, this one's a very comfortable thumbs up for me as well.
Right on.